أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون. لا يستوي أصحاب النار وأصحاب الجنة هم الفائزون. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المحكم العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون. هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallahu khairan for that recitation. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and get things started. The general setup for the evening is going to be that I believe each of our panelists is going to be speaking briefly on whatever they've prepared, inshallah. And then we're going to be having a question and answer session, I believe, towards the end. And there will be a setup for you guys to submit your questions. So we'll give you that information when it's relevant. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. We're going to introduce, first off, the man who was here before I was. He's the new imam here at Plano Masjid. He's coming to us with 13 years of experience as an imam in Florida and as a spiritual director at the University of Tampa. He has a master's of Islamic education from at Dewsbury, West Yorkshire in England, and is an Islamic counselor, interfaith speaker, and a certified Qadi. So everyone, please welcome to our community and to this event, Imam Hassan Subila.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I didn't catch it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Don't want to go off topic, but we learned from the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that even the words that we utter have a great impact in molding our demeanor, our character, and bringing us together. And in regards to what you just responded to, my salam, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ala adullukum ala shay'in idha fa'altumuhu tahabbtum." Should I not inform you of a practice that if you do it, it will create mutual love between you all? Afshu salama bainakum. Spread the greeting of peace amongst yourselves. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring that love amongst us all. What should we say? Ameen ya Rabbal Alamin. Moving forward, welcome everyone to the Rehab Center and the Clinic of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where everyone is welcome without judgment and embraced without reservation. The goal of our center is to facilitate the current needs of the community by means of addressing matters of relevance. We will do that by strategizing a solution for our predicaments and facilitating solutions for all of us to work upon. Once we can accomplish this, we will work diligently, collectively, and continuously till we overcome our problems and become an asset to humanity. Islam was given to us not so that we can work on solving our problems, rather we can facilitate solutions for humanity. That is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "An-nasu ma'adin ka-ma'adin tahabiru fil-Allah." Humanity, our minds, human beings are minds of gold and silver. All of us have been gifted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with something that our world currently needs. And the only way we can give it to our world is when we can unite together, bring our abilities together, and help society to become a better place. But no doubt, my friends, this entails a process. And I'm going to say to you today, as your Imam, I am committed, with your assistance, to making this process come to fruition. Inshallah. To start with, we have to acknowledge and accept certain things within our community and society which have become obstacles and hindrances in our path of progress. And we have to eliminate them. Today we begin with grief and the taboos surrounding grief in our culture. I will not say our faith, I will say our culture. There are three predominant statements that are uttered in houses when it comes to talking about grief, depression, anxiety, feeling down. One of those statements are, what will people say if they find out? Log kya kahenge? What will people say? Another statement is, your iman is weak. Your faith is weak. Pray and strengthen your bond with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the third and most prevalent one is, looks like someone has possessed you. You have a jinn or jadoo or black magic or evil eye. Let's go to the Imam for ruqyah. Brothers and sisters in Islam and fellow friends of the community, grief is real. Grief is real. It isn't a sign of weakness and it is not a sign of failure unless you feel that all the prophets of Allah alayhi wassalatu wassalam were failure. For every prophet faced a moment and a time of grief, some longer than others. And the most profound example that I find in the Holy Quran that highlights so many angles, which I don't have the opportunity to talk about tonight, but I'll close and end with this, is that when the Prophet Muhammad was fleeing from Mecca to Medina in hopes that he can save the Muslim community and allow Islam to flourish and spread its wings, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu took the Prophet into a cave. He ripped up his garments, he filled in all the holes to make sure that there was nothing harmful that could attack the Prophet After all was said and done, and the enemy was feet away, a few feet away from them, what dawned upon Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was grief. He started thinking, what did I do? Why did I come here? Why didn't we choose a better place? And the grief was so real that the Quran has documented till the end of times that the Prophet said to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he didn't say, la takhaf, don't be scared. He said, la tahzan, don't grieve. Don't grieve. Because all of us are human beings in us, on our journey. And in our journey, there's going to be hits and misses. There's going to be things that will teach us and things that will be a lesson for us. This is not the moment to grieve. Inna Allah ma'ana. When we are low in our morale and we are feeling so bad, we feel like dirt, remember, brothers and sisters, Allah is with you at that time. And I'll end with this. This verse highlighted a very significant point for you and I as the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All previous nations gained salvation because the Prophet's connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Musa alayhi salam himself said to his people when he was in the front of the Red Sea and Pharaoh and his army was behind him, he said, Inna ma'iya rabbi sayahdi. Look guys, Allah's with me. He'll guide me. And because of the guidance that He'll give to me, we'll be saved. But here Rasulullah is making a statement, لا تحزن إن الله معنا. That remember one thing, the help of Allah that's with the Prophet Muhammad is with this ummah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to see that light at times of darknesses. Ameen Rabbil Alameen.
So that was just Jazakallah khair for that, Imam Hamza. That was a well-suited reminder. Just a quick reminder to everybody that this is a big hall. There's a lot of people in here. Just a little bit of whispering adds up to a lot. So think about just keep it quiet while our speakers are imparting their wisdom. We really appreciate that. Thank you again to everyone who's turned out. This is a much larger crowd, I think, than anyone was expecting, mashallah. So props to all of you for being here on a Friday night. I believe also Sister Sadia mentioned that they're going to be opening up the activity room if there's children. That your mic is loud, so feel free to make your way in that general direction. I didn't really understand at first why I was asked to MC this event, because I'm very comedic generally, and this is not that sort of event. But, you know, there's hikmah in everything Allah does for us. Like, everyone experiences grief on a very personal level. So it's very fitting for everyone who's here to be experiencing this. We all have our reasons for being here, and I hope we all gain something really profound from this. Inshallah. So to get things moving, we're going to introduce our next speaker. This is actually someone I'm very close to my heart. His name is Brother Mahbub Ali. He is a co-founder of Rahma Institute, an organization dedicated to empowering families through education and social services. He has a master's degree in clinical counseling and mental health, which he got specifically with the intent of serving our Muslim community, which is very underserved in the realm of mental health. And he's been helping families and youth by providing workshops and classes and counseling sessions for years now, mashallah. So I'm going to go ahead and ask him to come up to the podium now and give his little soiree. Ladies and gentlemen, Brother Mahbub Ali.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the blessings He has given us, the blessing of guidance, the blessing of family. And we ask Allah to bless everyone here. You know, the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who does not thank the people does not thank Allah. And before we continue, I really want to thank our volunteers, Sister Sadia, especially the whole team behind her. You know, somehow this event was literally put together within the last 2-3 days max. And you know, people came out in the rain, and I found parking all over the back, I got wet coming in. So you know, somehow it's really a sign from Allah that, you know, this is an important topic. And just like how the rain was falling upon us, that's a mercy from Allah, we ask this gathering to be a mercy for all of us and our families. I mean, you know, just reflecting back on the last couple of days, not just here in Dallas, but really outside of Dallas as well, it's been a very difficult time for many of us. And I'm sure a lot of us had a hard time sleeping at night, had a hard time focusing in the day at work or with our families. And you know, subhanAllah, this really shows the human fitrah that we have. The human emotions that we have of showing emotions and sadness and confusion and having questions. And you know, subhanAllah, for a minute, let's not think about what professions are up here or who we are, what type of backgrounds we have. But subhanAllah, we're all in this room because at the end of the day, we are humans. We are fathers, we are mothers, we are brothers, we are sisters. And we are individuals that have emotions. And when we feel sadness, we want to talk about that sadness. When we have grief, we want to find an opportunity to help us get away from that grief. And you know, if you think about it, that's something that's in our prophetic tradition. When the Prophet ﷺ, who never met his mother, but when he was passing her grave, he cried. When his uncle passed away, he cried. when Khadija radiallahu anha passed away, and the Prophet ﷺ would hear a knock on the door, he would say, let it be the sister of Khadija. Because the sister of Khadija would remind him of his wife Khadija. And subhanAllah, there's a story that Anas ibn Malik relates to us. He says, when news came that the Prophet's son Ibrahim was about to pass away, the Prophet ﷺ went to go see him. And they say when the Prophet ﷺ saw Ibrahim, his eyes became filled with tears. Right? It's a very natural human instinct. And then one of the companions asked the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, are those tears? And the Prophet, he paused, he said, our eyes shed tears, our heart shows grief, but we do not say anything that displeases Allah. Then he looked at his son, as his son was taking his last breath. And he said, O Ibrahim, we are filled of sorrow because of your departure. Allahu Akbar. That really shows why this topic is important. That really shows that we gotta knock down these artificial barriers and walls that we put up to show how tough we are. We gotta for a second forget the selfies and the Instagrams and everything that we take and post to show a sometimes fake world and really face the reality of who we are as humans. And if there's anyone in the world who could do that, and if that's the Prophet ﷺ, the best of creation who walked this earth, then we know we could do that as well. So I know we have some amazing panelists with us today, and I don't want to take up the whole time. But the one thing I wanted to focus on is what we could do as a community to break this taboo of seeking help and expressing our emotions and our grief. You know, there's a study by the World Economic Forum, and they say 1 out of 4 individuals in this entire world will at least once in their lifetime experience some type of mental health problem. I mean, think about that for a minute, right? 1 out of 4 individuals in this entire world will at least one time in their lifetime experience a mental health problem. You know? And, you know, just looking at the panel, there's more than 4 people here, there's multiple people in this audience. And the thing with mental, wellness, just like how we go to the doctor to make sure that our heart is pacing the way it should be pacing, our blood pressure is at the right level, our sugar levels are at the right level, there is this science behind mental wellness as well. And that's what we want to talk about today. And specifically, I want to talk about, and I'm sure the other panelists will talk about this too, but a lot of times when people want to come for help, what stops them from coming for help? And for the longest time, I was sitting in your chair. I was someone that, wasn't in this field, wasn't really, someone who had a background that I have right now. I was working in corporate America, master's in, undergrad in marketing, business strategy, living my life. But then I got my master's in mental health, clinical counseling. And you go through through the sisters you guys did as well, you do your clinicals, you meet with different clients, meet with different people, and you really start to understand that there is an impact behind the work that myself, these sisters, and everyone else is doing. And there's reasons why people are kind of afraid to ask for help. And I wanted to go through those. I wanted to just, forget the technical terms. I know a lot of times at these events we try to, get all the details out there and everyone's taking notes, which is important. But if you walk away with one thing today, and if that one thing is that A, it's okay to get help, and B, this is where I have to go to get help, then I think we've accomplished what we wanted to do. So here's a couple of reasons why I see, and probably when I was sitting in your chair, that I didn't want to seek help. Number 1, the fear of the word counseling, therapy, or help, right? At the end of the day, none of us wants to be that person who says that I need help. There's something about us For the men, maybe it's not manly, it's not what you see in Old Spice commercials, right? It's not something that we talk about. A lot of times we don't know what counseling is. We think we're going to go into a room and lay down on someone's couch or bed and they're going to get into our inner soul and figure out our deepest secrets. But no, subhanAllah, counseling, it's not really that. It's a chance for you to sit down with someone who's non-judgmental, who has a background in mental, well-being, in providing the right education, for giving you a chance to just speak your mind and find solutions with you. It's a powerful experience, and it's a non-judgmental experience. It's a safe experience. So for us to think that counseling or therapy or asking for help is something that we shouldn't do, it's a taboo that we have to destroy in our society, and especially in our Muslim society. Because we're used to having like this, we put ourselves on this pedestal, and we often say that, look, I'm not that guy that needs help. I'm not that person who has to go and ask someone else for help, because I'll figure it out myself. A lot of times, guess what happens? Life moves on, we get busy, right? SubhanAllah, all of us have dual income families. We're both, out of the house the full day. And sometimes it's okay to pause and say, I need help. This word counseling isn't as bad as we think it is. This word, therapy, is not as bad as we think it is. It's not about our egos. It's not about, who we want to be in front of other people. When we go through a difficult time, or when we know someone else is going through a difficult time, believe me, brothers and sisters, and I'm sure we all have stories to share, but when someone comes and tells you, you have changed my perspective on life. You have stopped me from wanting to commit suicide. You have made a better relationship between me and my parents. That's when you say, inshallah, this could help. And for those of you who have gone through counseling, inshallah, you guys know what I'm talking about. Fear number 2. I don't want everyone to know my business. Right? I don't want everyone to know my problems. And honestly, I think this is one of the biggest problems, in the Muslim community. Because let's face it, I had a surgery before, and if you're praying salah next to your surgeon, you're like, oh wait, they might know something about me that I don't want everyone else to know, right? But subhanAllah, seeking counseling, there's ethics behind it, there's principles behind it. We do our best to maintain the privacy of all the individuals that walk in. It's non-judgmental. And most importantly, it's an amana between us and Allah. Honestly, it is at the end of the day. Because we're not individuals that want to backbite or gossip or slander individuals that walk in. We want to give them a safe haven. We want to be able to go and see them anywhere in the public, but they feel safe that we don't, even though we know their inner problems, that we don't share that with the rest of the world. And that's a principle, those are ethics that all of us, both Muslim and non-Muslim professionals, hold dear to. So I encourage you guys not to, be afraid of asking for help because of, these fears. And the last 2, inshallah, number 3 is the fear of change. And I hear this a lot. I hear that a lot of times, people don't want to, they're afraid of change, they're afraid of what's going to come next. Why do I have to change about myself? They don't want to hear someone else tell them that, hey, look, if you have anger management problems and if you don't take care of that, it might impact your children, and your children might get impacted, it might create them to have other issues. They might start thinking, why does someone else tell me that? Why do I have to change? Shouldn't someone else change, but that change shouldn't be me? A lot of times, subhanAllah, brothers and sisters, just like how the seasons come along and everything around us changes, we as humans have to change as well. That's our journey in this life. And a lot of times when you come for help, it's not about how do you help the other individual in that relationship. It's about how do you find the right help as an individual where you can blossom and become a better person. The 4th one, I think Sister Abida is going to talk about this as well, so I'll briefly talk about it, is the fear of being diagnosed. The fear of someone telling you that there's not something wrong with you, because there isn't anything wrong with you. But you might have a challenge you have to deal with. And the best analogy I want to give brothers and sisters about this is, recently I had a family member who got into a car accident. You know, when you get into a car accident, you know what's physically wrong with that person, because you see it, we all see it. If someone breaks the arm, someone breaks the leg, you see that. And you go visit that person, you say, how's your arm, how's your leg? Because you physically see it. A lot of times when you have issues that other people can't see, you start doubting yourself. And you say, no one else sees this issue. Do I really have that issue? Is it just in my mind? Am I just playing games with myself? So we're afraid to get diagnosed because we're afraid of changing something. But subhanAllah, just like when you go to the doctor to get diagnosed with high blood pressure or flu, if you have the right diagnosis, it can help you tremendously with whatever issue you're going through. And you know, there's a science behind it, there's steps behind it. And it's something that, inshallah, will be profound. And I want to end with this, inshallah. You know, a lot of times when people think about counseling or help, we think it has to be a group of professionals, or a group of imams, or somebody that does it. But honestly, I'm a believer that all of us here play a role in helping each other. I really do. Because I believe that all of us here are a friend to somebody else. I feel like all of us here are brother or sister, like I mentioned, some way, somehow, part of a family structure. And all of us, at the end of the day, look ourselves in the mirror. And we know what we're going through. And there's a beautiful saying of the Prophet ﷺ. It's a longer hadith in Sahih Muslim, so I'll just paraphrase the first part. He says that whenever someone removes a grief from a believer, that Allah will remove a grief from the griefs of this world, from the individual who helped on the day of resurrection. Whenever a believer will make something easy, make a difficulty easy for another Muslim who's going through a difficulty, Allah will make a difficulty easy for the individual in the hereafter. Whenever Allah covers or comforts a believer in this world, Allah will comfort and cover that person in the hereafter. And Allah is always in the aid of the individual who is helping the other brother or sister. You know, brothers, that's a powerful, powerful saying of our Prophet. Because at the end of the day, what he's saying is that, brothers, when we see that our wife is maybe having a hard day, it's okay to go buy her something, smile at her, to help her with the dishes or the difficulties, whatever it is. You know, sisters, if you see your husband having a hard day, it's okay to go give him a hug. A 30-second, that's what we do in my house. Whenever my kids see me having a hard day, they all say, oh, Baba needs a 30-second hug. I don't know why it's 30 seconds, but it literally comes and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oh wait, we lost count, we start all over. It becomes like a 2-minute hug. But whatever it is, you know, brothers and sisters, if you see your kids having a hard time, you know, like just don't put them on electronics when you get home. Go play with them, wrestle them, tickle them, whatever it is, right? So we have to help each other. And I'll end with this, inshallah. If there's anyone that you know that is screaming for help on the inside, but their voice is not loud enough to be heard by all of us in this room, let's be that person, inshallah, that helps them out. And inshallah, the other speakers will talk about how we can do that, and we'll have some Q&A around that too, inshallah. Jazakallah khair for your time. May Allah bless you, and bless all of our panelists as well. Ameen.
Jazakallah khair. Those are really, really important reminders, really important messages that we should all really take heed of. In the interest of time, I'll keep things moving. Inshallah, next up, we have an organization, representatives from an organization here. It's called MAPS, the Muslim Association for Psychological Services. And it's a social enterprise that was founded by 3 distinct clinicians with the purpose of bridging the gap between mental health needs that exist within our existing Muslim community. And so it's all about providing access to Muslim mental health care professionals who understand the background of where we come from and why we have the heroes that we have, and are able to use modern medical tools to help us deal with those issues. So they operate here in the greater DFW community, and we're really honored to have two of their co-founders as panelists today. Sister Saiba Ali is a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist, and Sister Abida Minhas is also a licensed professional. Next couple speakers. So first up is going to be Sister Abida, so please everybody give her a very warm welcome, Sister Abida.
Assalamualaikum. I'm going to, as the brother mentioned earlier, I'm so glad to see, mashallah, such a great turnout on a rainy Friday night. And as the brother mentioned, my background is in clinical psychology. I'm currently in private practice in Richardson and McKinney, and alhamdulillah, I've been privileged to be in this field for the last 7.5 years with my training as well as in private practice. So I'm going to talk a little briefly about emotional and mental health services, starting with what is a mental illness. The APA, which is the American Psychiatric Association, defines mental illness anything that affects your emotional, thinking, or behavior patterns. So basically, it's anything that affects the way you're thinking, different than your norm, your emotional states, your behaviors. And as Brother Mahmoud mentioned earlier, 1 in 5 adults actually, according to the American Psychiatric Association, are affected by mental illnesses, which means 19% of the US adults. That's a pretty large number. 1 in 24 have serious mental illnesses like schizophrenia, bipolar disorders, schizoaffective disorders, things that are beyond the normal, what we consider normal realm of disorders. What I see a lot of in my clinical practice is a lot of depression and anxiety. And historically, that's changed. So, where you started off with a lot of people with a lot more serious illnesses, we've evolved to having less serious illnesses like anxiety and depression, but in bigger numbers. So depression, anxiety, 1 in 5 adults in the US suffers from some form of it. Again, it's a huge number, and it affects our social and family activities as well as work activities. Some of the things that I do in my clinical practice, of course, is in my first therapy session, is we kind of look for signs of mental illnesses. So we do a lot of assessments, we do a lot of clinical interviews, so getting family history, getting any kind of changes that have happened in the last few months of a person's life, and just getting an overall assessment of their mental health stage. So kind of getting an encompass change in their lifestyles. A lot of times people talk about when they've come in, how depression or anxiety has hindered them. A lot of what we do in clinical practices is we try to figure out why and the reasons that has happened. So is it an ongoing issue? Is it a new issue? Is this something that has a trigger, meaning that it was a new event, something traumatic? Something that might be causing trauma, of course, is a sudden loss of a death of a loved one. Traumatic event could be something that is a new experience altogether. For example, something sudden, we call that trauma. Something unexpected. So that is something that we have to look at when we look at a person coming in for therapy, is trying to figure out their overall mental health state. Again, the reason behind why they're coming in, is this an ongoing issue? Is this a new onset? Or if this is something somebody's been struggling with for a long time? I always do a depression anxiety inventory. We can look at somebody's mental health state using different assessments and tools that we have. So looking at how high their depression is, how high their anxiety is. And something that always stands out to people that are depressed, because I think for most of us, we've gone through some form of a disturbance in our mental health state. So whether through some form of depression or anxiety, overall just hopelessness, the one sign that we have to look out for is how long this is happening for. If it happens for more than 2 weeks, we look at that as a clinical issue. So depression can happen to people for various reasons: loss of a job, loss of a loved one, loss of a new event that you don't see. So again, trauma, something that hasn't happened before. So a lot of times what we look at, and a lot of people get shocked when I say this, it's 2 weeks or more when you have the same excessive feelings is a clinical diagnosable issue. So certainly if your life has changed for more than 2 weeks, and you feel like you're struggling, it's definitely time to get help. So it's something to look out for. The main things that I really want to talk about, things that are common, things like depression and anxiety. The big thing we look out for in depression is the lack of interest. So you don't feel like getting out of bed. Your appetite changes. You don't feel like you're sleeping well at night. You have racing thoughts all the time about worry, about things that are happening, not happening. The other big thing we see in depression is people lose interest in the things they're doing normally. So somebody who likes walking to the park on a normal basis will just say, I don't want to go to the park anymore. I mean, a change. That's not like the person you know. So that's one signal that we see in depression, and that's something certainly we ask people when they come into therapy is, do you have hopelessness? Do you feel like you don't like to do something you have enjoyed doing before? The other common thing that we see clinically is anxiety. So in anxiety, people feel a lot of worry a lot of the time. So not just because you're worried about public speaking like I was today. It's more like you have worry about something over and over, ongoing for a long time. So a fear of, something might happen to my child, but excessively. You might worry that you might lose your job, but it happens again over and over. The one, again, signal that we look for in anxiety is how it affects a person's physical health. So with people with high levels of anxiety, we see that they have high blood pressure, they have excessive sweating. Some people even reported that they felt like they were having a heart attack. And a lot of times that's a signal that a person has excessive anxiety, and it might be turning into what we call a panic attack. So those are things that you look out for. The one thing that I think is figuring out what a person's triggers are. I think that's very, very important to know what your triggers are, what causes you those symptoms to raise or lower. A lot of times, if you are not able to find an answer, or if Dr. Google isn't giving the information that you're looking for, I highly recommend seeking professional help. My goal is that, I don't always have the answers, so we have to get other people involved. We have a wonderful panel here today, so there's always a good teamwork that we can get together. The first treatment, of course, is do you need to be treated by a medical doctor? Is your mental health illness so grave that we need to get you to a psychiatrist or a physician or a primary care doctor? Do they need to diagnose you and put you on some medication? So that's the first step. And of course, you can always do therapy. And therapy is something that we always recommend in conjunction to if you ever start taking any medication for your mental health illness. So research shows that the best treatment and the best outcome are people who do both. So people who go to therapy, people who take medication seem to have better quality of life. A lot of times the other treatments that we recommend, of course, are group therapy. That's always very helpful because you get a lot of support from people going through the same issues as you may be. And then, of course, combination of different things. So medication, therapy, as well as going into group therapy or support systems. And to me, support systems can look like different things. You can talk to a professional in the community. Imams are great resources for that. They always provide good guidance and good tools. And a lot of times, it's also figuring out what works for you and what doesn't. So some people don't like the idea of taking medication, so that may not be an avenue you want to pursue long term. Although if you've been suffering with something that's causing you physical illness, then just like Brother Mahbub mentioned, if you have a heart issue or you have diabetes, you want to treat it with the right medication. So the problem with mental illness is that we don't see it. That's the biggest challenge we have. And lastly, what I want to talk about is the misconceptions. That's something Brother Mahbub talked about, but clinically I want to address those misconceptions. One of them being is that when you have a mental health diagnosis or suffer from any of these ailments, that makes you crazy. People look at it and think, oh, you're going to a therapist. Are you okay? Are you crazy? Or you feel like, well, I don't need to go to a therapist. I don't need to go to a doctor. I'm a positive person. I can make dua. I can go spend more time at the masjid and I'll be okay. And a lot of times those are very, very good coping tools, but that may not be enough for some people. So it's always, again, good to have all the combinations so you have all the tools in your belt. The other thing is people feel about therapy specifically is, well, I have friends. I'm not like, you know, American people that are lonely and they have nobody to talk to. I have lots of friends, I have lots of relatives. But therapy and seeking help for your mental health is very different than talking to a friend. You get very objective, very clinical setting where you can sit down and discuss your problems and get medical tools. It supports, it allows you to talk about your feelings in a confidential private room, in a private area, so you can discuss your issues without feeling like you're being pressured or feeling like you're being judged. So a lot of times, it's just like, you know, that Brother Mahmoud mentioned, is you go to a doctor for medical help, you go to therapists, you go to psychiatrists to get similar help. So one of the things that we do is we have different things that we do in psychology, in clinical psychology, is using a lot of tools. In therapy, that's something we try to do, is give you the best tools that are available. So, alhamdulillah, this is something to look out for. There's always help available, as the brother mentioned, and Seba will come up and talk about that. But we have lots of great resources. If you ever feel like somebody has any mental health changes from your community, from your loved ones, it's always very important that you try to get them tools and help that they may need. Even if they deny it, even if they go through the stages where they feel like, well, I don't need your help, it's better that they're safe rather than sorry. Thank you.
For example, obviously we have the panelists up here who all have counseling sessions and meet with people regularly and do their very great share of their work. But we also have a lot of mental health professionals, I believe, in the audience right now as well. So I would ask them all to please stand up so that the community can see you and they'll know who you are and who to reach out to if they do need help. Okay. Brothers, you gotta get into it. Represent, what are you doing? So okay, those are people that you can reach out to, and Brother Mahfouz also runs regular counseling sessions. He has office hours, I believe. We can get that information up somewhere at the end of the event. And as a quick reminder, if you guys are still hoping to text questions but you don't remember the number, I'll give that out one more time. It was 469-557-1319. That was 469-557-1319. Okay, so I believe the announcements are quick enough.
Everybody, in light of time and to ensure that we accommodate everyone, and in addition to the Isha prayer, we're requesting that inshallah Isha prayer will be postponed till 9:30. We have one more panelist who wants to discuss, and then we want to take some time to answer your questions and then close off the event. So inshallah, your patience is much appreciated. We'll have a panelist, and after that we'll open the floor for questions, and Isha prayer will be after 9:30 inshallah.
Yeah, he has the authority for that, we don't. So, okay, alhamdulillah. So we're going to keep moving. I'm going to ask Sister Saiba to come up to the stage. Like I said, she is a licensed professional counselor with a master's in clinical psychology, and I'm sure whatever she has to say is extremely beneficial, so please pay attention. Assalamu
My name is Nivali, and I begin by offering my condolences to the family and friends of those that have lost in this tragedy and the tragedy that has impacted our whole community. I cannot begin to imagine the pain and suffering that you all must be going through. And I want you to know that you are in our thoughts and prayers. The heart of the whole community is aching with you. Like most of you, I am overcome with feelings of sadness and deep pain. I want you all to take a moment to acknowledge, to recognize that something traumatic happened in our community. It is painful, it's perplexing, it's hard to believe, it has scared us, it has raised a lot of questions and concerns in our minds. I want you to allow yourself to see that your heart This pain, this heaviness that you feel is grief. You are grieving. And I want you to understand the grieving process. Grieving includes a wide range of emotions. You may be experiencing shock, disbelief, anguish, loss, anger, guilt, regret, anxiety, fear, confusion, and feeling overwhelmed. It is difficult to sleep and eat for some of us. Everyone grieves differently, but there are some stages of grief that are most commonly identified. The first stage of grief is identified as denial and isolation. This is the stage in which we try to block out the truth. We hope to wake up and realize that was a nightmare. Nothing like a tragedy happened to us. But we are not ready to accept this harsh reality because it hurts so much. Because it seems to make no sense at all. And then that reality turns into anger. So the second stage of grief becomes anger because we're not ready to accept the harsh reality. The third stage of grief is bargaining. The normal reaction to this helplessness and this vulnerability is to regain control, to speculate with if only statements. We try to bargain, we say if only we've done this, if only we try to do that. We try to bargain with faith and with God. This stage can be accompanied by a sense of guilt. The fourth stage of grieving is depression. Sadness that realizes that nothing has changed. The illness happened, it's real, and the consequences of it are real. The last stage is acceptance. This phase is marked by calmness and resignation, an acceptance of what has happened, and a newfound wisdom in somehow trying to make sense of it. Going through these stages of grief takes time. You cannot expect to feel better right away, or there is no magic potion to do that. This is going to take time, this is going to take processing on your part. It is normal for all of us to feel these emotions, in some degree and in some order. But it is important to know, and it's important to believe that you will get past this. We will get past this. The community will get past this. Understand also that your children too may have heard something. They may have heard something from someone, some other thing. And you might want to have a method of speaking to them about any tragedies that happen around us in a manner that's age appropriate. Because we know our children, we know how to address those issues with them. It is better than them learning it from some peers or in a manner that's not appropriate for their age. I want you to take time to take care of yourself. To take care of yourself in the way that helps you the most. Take care of others around you, especially those that are impacted the most by this tragedy. Be very careful to care for them in a way that they need. It is likely that you have questions, that you have concerns, that you have curiosity, but please replace your curiosity with compassion. Please replace your questions of why and how to what can I do to help. Speak less, listen more. Sometimes to support someone in trauma, the best thing that you can do is to sit with them in silence. Just be there, not in ways that you want to be there for them, but in ways that they need you to be there for them. You may be scared and you may need answers in your chat groups and social media, but please rein in your speculation. Be very careful. Perhaps you wish to help figure out what to do next, or how to be a source of prevention. There will be a time for that. Trust me, the religious leaders and other leadership of the community is already working on it. But for now, just allow yourself to breathe and to exercise utmost compassion and wisdom. MashaAllah is a beautiful resident community and a lovely, compassionate group of people that we have here. We have community members ready to help each other. You're here because you care. You are often there to help each other. You may feel some uneasiness and have regrets of something more that you could have done to help. But please understand that in situations like these, based on research, 90% of the time there is an underlying trait of mental breakdown that is nobody's fault. That is not much you could have done. Being a first and second generation immigrant community, we have a lot of additional stresses in our life. Adjusting to a new country, a different language, a different value system, different lifestyle, separation from our immediate family, cross-generational issues, being a minority, Islamophobia, discrimination, our children finding their Muslim American identity, especially for the youth. We have a lot of stressors that are unique to our community. Our hearts are also scarred by bruises of war, genocide, oppression in some of our countries of origin. Come on, this is all nonsense. If we have a physical wound, we seek the doctor, but we pack our hearts with anguish and wounds and expect to go on without any professional healing care. We carry all these burdens with you, and I commend you that you still take the time out to help others. But we all do the best we can with the best of intentions, and then we leave it to Allah, who is in control of all the world and who has a plan for us. Do not surround yourself with regret and what-if statements. Do not be too hard on yourself. Keep doing your best. Sometimes it may not be enough, but then you keep doing what you do. You keep improving, you keep growing, you keep trying harder. But do not carry regrets about what may be beyond your control. If you knew those who passed away, try to think of them as a good memory of them. Try to think of a happy memory with them, a joke they said, or something that you said which made them laugh. Try to carry them in your heart to comfort you. Find a way to help yourself. I hope you find your light and are able to shine on others. May Allah bless you with love, peace, strength, wisdom, and the best of this world and after that. If you need any help with coping at this time, we are going to, we have counselors here that you could approach after the question and answer session, and we will inshallah try to help you. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair for that, and I mean, I'll keep it. I think you might want your computer back. Okay. So we already have a couple questions coming in, so we're gonna open up with those, and I think who's gonna be answering those to begin with. The first question is, what if you're trying to reach out to someone who's depressed or has some sort of mental illness, but they refuse to help? What should you do then? So I'll let you start with that one.
Okay, yeah, so I think this is a tough one, especially in our community, because a lot of times people want to refuse to go to help. So 2 pieces of advice I think could help. One is to obviously try to educate them, try to get them to understand the importance of doing it, going for help. If they still don't want to go, you should go first to see a counselor to see how you can help. I know that sounds a little bit strange, right? Because you're not the person that might need the direct help. But a lot of times, there's something called family therapy and working as a family. And if you go as an individual, your counselor or someone else might be able to give you some ideas around how to bring that individual. If you try to break down the taboos and tell them why they need help, that individual might be able to address it and give some ideas.
Okay, all right. Jazakallah khair. And then the second question is, although mental health is becoming a lot less taboo of a topic as evidenced by this event, alhamdulillah, what is your response to those who say that mental health isn't real, it's something we should just fight through, get over?
For me? Okay, so I'm sure this room has a light switch. Does it have a light switch in this room? We can turn the lights on and off. There you go. See, mental illness isn't like a light switch. You just can't turn it on and off. And by the way, whoever did that was on cue. Thank you so much. So a lot of times we have this misconception that, whatever problem you have is just going to go away, right? Or you don't have to deal with it. So I think it's important that, one, it does exist. I know a lot of times we don't do that. We say if we do more dhikr, pray more salah, and like Sister Abda mentioned, those are all really important, coping mechanism tools. But subhanAllah, when you see someone, and believe me when I say this, when you see someone that has a challenge or with their mental health, like you realize that it is a true challenge and it does exist. So please, inshallah, just believe us, as our profession and what we see, it does exist. Inshallah. Wait.
From the Islamic perspective, brothers and sisters, we need to understand that our Quran is a holistic lifestyle model that addresses mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. And we cannot throw all of our problems in the basket of spirituality and think just by praying namaz things are going to get better. There is to be a correlation between our spiritual well-being, our mental well-being, and our physical well-being. And so it is a vital component that needs to be addressed exclusively, not intertwined with spirituality itself.
Yeah, one of the analogies I've seen is if someone wanted to, get really buff, you wouldn't recommend they go to the masjid and pray salah. So, like similarly, if you're trying to build your mental health, you've got to use the tools that are meant for that specifically. I think now the next two questions are going to be for your sister Abida. So the first one is going to be, what about someone who has been diagnosed with OCD? It is like someone who has specifically been diagnosed with that illness. What would you recommend? What would be the tools that you would recommend for someone and the people around them to use?
Okay, so OCD means obsessive compulsive disorder. Generally when we see OCD, it comes under the umbrella of anxiety disorders. As I mentioned earlier, anxiety is something that means excessive worry, so you have worry all the time, constantly. So with people with OCD, they have compulsive and they do a lot of things where they have rituals to do the behavior over and over. One of the things that works for OCD patients is medication, and two, of course, is therapy. So what I use a lot of called cognitive behavioral therapy. So we teach you strategies and tools to be able to get rid of some of the symptoms that are presented in OCD. Again, the compulsiveness, overthinking, stuck on one ritual, and that seems to be a big one, and how to treat it. So therapy and medication combo is a good one.
Jazakallah. The second question is going to be specifically when you have been diagnosed with a mental illness, as someone in a family setting. How can you get the people around you, your family members, your parents, your friends, to pique their interest in your diagnosis of illness, help them understand the importance of getting medication, the therapy you need, or help, especially if they're really reserved on topics like this?
So historically, and thank you for the question, that's a really great question actually. What I see a lot of in our community is a lot of denial. So a lot of people either don't want to accept that there's a diagnosis, they're not comfortable with the diagnosis, and unfortunately one of the main feelings behind that is there's fear. Mental health illnesses means I'm crazy, what's going to happen with that mental health diagnosis? So a lot of times, as we mentioned tonight, is just like you have a broken arm, just like you have diabetes, just like you have heart issues, physical ailments, mental health ailments also need to be treated. So, researching, looking for the right answers, looking for the right physician, the right therapist, and there's lots of us out there, is the way to go ahead and try to get that fear, that anxiety out of the issue and try to address the issue head on. So again, there's a lot of fear behind the diagnosis or the illness, so we have to try to get that stigma out. We have to educate ourselves and get comfortable with treatment.
Okay, Jazakallah. Do we know if we have more questions, or? Right, okay, so then real quick, I'm going to give an announcement. IACC is really proud to actually host a psychiatric clinic, a mental health clinic, that runs weekly Tuesdays from Asr to Isha. It is by appointment, but the link to make appointments is on the IACC website, planetmasjid.org. So, if you're looking to make an appointment, just head there. You can probably do it on your phone. I'm pretty sure our website has been updated enough to do that. So feel free, and please take advantage of the resources around you if and when you need help, inshallah. All right, so here are the last two questions, and we're going to pose these to Sister Saiba. The first is going to be, what are some ways and tips on how to deal with social anxiety, especially when your parents force or push you into social situations that you're not comfortable in, that you feel anxious in?
So off the bat, whenever you are forced into a situation, you're going to have anxiety about it. So, just from the beginning, question is, if you're forced into social situations by your parents, you feel social anxiety. And if any time that a person has loss of control, a feeling that you're not in charge of what you do, there's going to be anxiety. So my tip for the parents would be, don't force someone into situations, but that provokes anxiety. And how do we get to the parents? That's psychoeducation, maybe create more awareness of situations like this, but because with anxiety, it has to be a process with a mental health professional. Removing any kind of anxiety has to be a process. And that's how we get there. So the first step would be to make an appointment with a mental health professional and to say, hey, I have social anxiety. And these are definitely, we have really good outcomes in anxiety. That we have really good treatment and outcomes in this. So that's my response to that question.
Sorry, second question on someone else's phone, my bad. Okay, and the next question was going to be, compared to American kids, we do have, let me actually read this before I read it out. Hold on. Okay, so compared to American kids, a lot of our South Asian and immigrant parents force our kids to do more than what they're capable of, it seems sometimes. And those pressures tend to mount and cause issues. So, what is a way to handle this set of circumstances and this sort of expectation and this culture that we built up?
Again, the answer is in the question. We are speaking about situations that are unreasonable. When we say that the parents are forcing the children the higher expectations, there in itself is a problem. Now, the origin of that is we are the first generation immigrants. They came here, they sacrificed a lot to come to this country, and they wanted to build it up. And we have a different value system where we want the children to be successful. So we come from that expectation, and we have those with our children. There's a good side to that, but there has to be a consultation with the child to figure out if they can handle the pressure. It cannot be, unreasonable expectations is going to be a problem. So this is again a part where psychoeducation for parents and understanding the capacity of your child is really important.
Jazakallah khair for that. That's really all the time we have for questions at the moment. If you guys still have questions you want to ask, the panelists will be here until Isha, so please feel free to approach the table. And if you, again, would be private to ask questions, make an appointment with the clinic. That's the best advice I can give you. Now, I believe Imam Azhar has a small thing he'd like to say, inshallah, and then we have some small announcements. So, Jazakallah khairan for sticking it through, guys.
Jazakumullah khairan to everyone for their time, their participation, their patience. I know this is a very complex topic and an hour cannot do justice to it, but as your Imam, I promise you this is just the beginning of much more to come. As I said in the beginning, we want to acknowledge what it means to be a community. As a community, we are one family. And just as culturally, we are so protective over how people see our family, we're going to be extra protective on how people see our community because we are one family. And as a family, we can cry. It doesn't mean that we're weak. Crying in our religion is a very great tool of getting through your grief and connecting with Allah and coming to terms with the situation at hand and gaining the strength to move forward with it. We can comfort one another. Brothers and sisters, as a community, we are supposed to be a source of comfort. So I want to see a change in the atmosphere at the masjid. When we come in the masjid, we should enter with smiles so we can replicate those smiles on faces of others. Does that make sense? Number two, we want to extend greetings to everyone, especially the person that we're praying beside on the right and the left, not those people that we know personally or those people that we're accustomed to hanging out with. And the third thing we want to see change, and I think we could do this from tonight, is that anyone that we see sitting alone, go and sit with them. Introduce yourself. Remember, a lot of the imminent problems could be resolved by just sitting with each other, sharing some time with one another, and being there for each other. As for our personal life and at home, what we need to do is reintroduce hugs and kisses and extending words of appreciation. When the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ kissed his grandson, a Sahabi said, I have so many children, I don't kiss my kids. He said, what can I do if Allah has taken that mercy away from your heart? So let us restore that. It doesn't matter if your children are in their 30s. If you see them tonight, kiss them. If you can, hug them. And you can say, I love you. I want to end with a small story. Because this brother, Allah bless his soul, a very close brother to me, opened my eyes. He was a non-Muslim. He woke up one morning with 5 siblings. His mother had run away from home. He had to lose his life dreams, and he had to be the caretaker of 4 children, which were his brothers and sisters, only because his mother had left him. He says he took this upon himself, and he started beating himself up because of this. Why did this happen to me? Why did I lose my opportunity to join the football team and get a scholarship and be successful? His life went into drugs, drug dealing, crimes, and through it all, he got AIDS. But what happened was Allah gave him Islam. And Islam taught him one thing, and he told me the story. He said, a moment came in my life that I confronted my mother. The same mother that left me for her with her boyfriend in the middle of the night and left us with nothing at home. I confronted her and I said to her, you know, Mom, I forgive you. And I forgive you because I love you. This was so powerful. Because he taught me in Islam, we don't run from our situations, we confront them and we try to resolve them. This brother, as much as people wanted to criticize him because of his tattoos, and because of the fact that he had AIDS, they didn't want to stand next to him, he was my husband, he was my masjid cleaner, and Allah took him from this world in the month of Ramadan. So remember one thing, everyone out there is a beautiful person. And if we feel we have better values and we know better, then why don't we practice it and share it with everyone? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite our hearts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite our thoughts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite our path and allow us to continue moving together as one family, as one ummah for the betterment of ourselves, our family, our community, and the entire humanity. Ameen.